Here is our destination for the clock. I've got a little reference on the ground for approximately where it's going to go. We're going to take this grass, turn it into a hole. After a couple sweaty hours of digging, we have our hole. We are below the frost line here in Minnesota. This is a 4-foot by 4-foot frame, which is going to support this rebar structure. These threads will fit the bottom of the clock, and we've used a template to make these so that they're in the right place. These are hot dipped galvanized, so they should last longer than I care about the clock. And we've got 1/2-inch rebar, which is our structure. So this should do a great job of holding the clock in place. Next step is to get it lined up in the hole correctly, and then we're going to start pouring concrete. Here is the arrangement that we ended up with. We have a 4-foot by 4-foot box on the bottom, and we have a, in this case, 26-inch by 26-inch box on the inside for the chimney of this. I've got some conduit running into here for electrical. There's 2 runs, a high voltage and a low voltage run there, and then another run that's a little shallower out here for some landscape lights. And the way that we set this up is the main footing, so the main form is up to here, and then we've got this one removable piece of the form at the very top, which will pour, trowel, and then remove this, and then we can bevel this off. So I think we're ready. We've got our conduit tied roughly in place here. Probably spread those out a little bit just for electrical box clearance, but we're in good shape. This center chimney is suspended above the bottom there by just the ground here, so we can actually pour this all at one time. And there we go. So this should take about 60 bags of concrete, and that should be enough to keep the clock from coming up. We've got about 10 bags in so far. We've got our base filled in. These wings on the bottom of the form were from an earlier idea before we tried to actually suspend the box from the air. And so I'm having to work around those a little bit, but things are underway. I've got the threaded rod protected, and just time for more concrete. Well, we've got concrete all the way to the top of the form and have been troweling it a little bit. Right now we're still waiting for the concrete to settle and some of the water to rise out of the top. There's some additional troweling ahead. The next step is to pull off this top inch form, which will allow us to bevel the concrete. Need to wait a little while before that is ready, before the concrete's set up enough to do that, but this is the state at the moment. Well, a thunderstorm is on the way, so got some troweling done. I may have to cut the bevel in with a diamond blade and a circular saw, and I think that'd be fine, but time to stop. Rain and lightning are coming. Well, it's early the next morning. We've got some water, but for the most part we survived. Dirt ran a little bit under the tarp, but all things considered, not too bad. I don't think it was super severe, but there was enough lightning that I didn't want to be out here working during the storm. Filed under the category of best laid plans, was never able to use our top special 1-inch footing here due to the lightning that hit, so I need to pull this off and then get the forms apart here, and we'll see how this all came out. I have the template for the clock on the concrete here. Now, to be fair, this template is not perfect how this was made. The holes are the important part. The actual outer shape of the template's just an approximation. But I'm a little disappointed to see that our form here ended up being rotated a little bit relative to the likely base of the clock. Not a huge issue, obviously not something structural, and I think I can probably clean it up a little bit with some grinding on the base here, but I'm not going to worry about that too much until the clock is installed. What I do need to do next, before I can fill the hole in, is get these bollard poles in the right place. These are Schedule 40 4.5-inch diameter tubes, and what eventually will go over these are decorative sleeves that will hopefully match the clock a little better than just the bare pole. I have used these stakes to roughly place them and some levels to get the bases in the right place. Now I'm going to put some dirt in the bottom of the hole to hold the bases in the right spot, and as I go up, I'll be able to make fine adjustment to the poles so that they're actually level where we get to where we want to go. On to what's hopefully the last of the concrete, filling up the bollard poles. I expect this to take about 3 bags, which is a little bit smaller project than the 62 that the main footing took. Well, here's the trench for the conduit running toward the house, and this will facilitate the heater for the clock and maybe some low voltage wiring for a temperature humidity sensor. We'll see what happens. While digging, I rediscovered the sewer cleanout. This was last seen a number of years ago and looks like the grass just sort of took it over, and wouldn't you know it, it was right in the way. Here's the entrance for the landscape lighting. Got this conduit here, cut that off to be a little bit more reasonable height, and fished through 4 wires for a couple different lighting positions. And now the dirt goes back in the hole. One thing that I'm not sure everyone does when setting up a clock like this, but seems like a good idea to me, is having some kind of soft interface between the bottom of the clock and the concrete foundation. This is a neoprene strip. This is about 1/4 of an inch thick, and it's a couple inches wide. And my plan is to cut strips of this to go underneath the perimeter of the clock. And this will help us have something that keeps the painted cast iron from abrading on the concrete and should increase the life of the clock a little bit and also not color the concrete rust colored. So this is the template that we use to set up the foundation in the concrete, and this was taken right off of the clock itself. So we will continue using this as a template for our strips. I'm going to just lay this out underneath here, and then we will cut it to length, and then we will kind of arrange this and cut out the holes here. This is not going to be an exact science. I'm going to overhang a little bit, and then the nice part is once we get it there, we can use this template to get it pretty much exact. I'm not as much worried about an airtight, watertight seal, as I just want something under the clock that we can use to take up a little bit of the leveling needs that we need, as well as have something between the concrete and the metal. Using a paint marker and just setting this below the template, I can lay out a rough place for the hole as well as mark it so I can put it in the same place again. I have east and west already handled. So this is north, and we're just going to cut this out. This is going to be a generous hole that's larger than the mark here, because this doesn't need to be a gasket necessarily. It just needs to be a rubber barrier. So cutting this out, and we'll have our 3rd side, and the 4th side will be the same process. Here are the neoprene strips cut and in place, ready for the base. I think that turned out really well, labeling them and using the template to cut these to size. The foundation, I think, is done. We've got the landscape wire pulled and a little bit more concrete finishing done just to do some final leveling. So this is a great place to stop this video. Next up is getting the clock body assembled and ready to be put in place. Thanks for watching.